One way to improve your fly fishing skills is to fish more often. Spring and fall have some good options for some great fishing. Some of it's below the surface, fishing nymphs, but fishing streamers is another good way to fish in the fall and spring. Gives you an opportunity to catch some bigger fish, especially with fall runs of brown trout and spring runs of rainbow. Let's take a look at some of the ways you can fish and take a look at how we use sinking lines to improve our fishing success. All right, here's an assortment of a few different types of streamers you can fish for bait fish. You've got a mylar bait fish with a synthetic fur tail. Pretty popular for like saltwater, warm water type fishing, but they also work for trout. The mylar kind of gives that scaled finish to the fly like a real minnow. We've got some of the feather streamers which are real popular. Some variations of Chester Marion spruce fly, one of the best big fish fishermen on the Yellowstone. And what this hackle collar does when it's tied real thick is it imitates a sculpin. And actually when held against the current, the head of it will pulsate. We've got a conehead kiwi, a variation of Jack's kiwi muddler, a little deeper version of it with a conehead, lead body. Use a little rabbit turret fur for pectoral fins and for the wing on it. Lots of motion. Rabbit fur, the hair itself moves, but also the hide will undulate and move. So it's always moving no matter what you're doing. Here's another variation on a sculpin with marabou, and I used a plastic heartbeat for the head, put it on sideways. This would be a very lightweight fly that's easy to fish on a lighter weight rod. These flies over here are also really easy to fish on a lighter weight rod. The rabbit fur definitely picks up some weight when it's wet, and you want to use a big enough rod to throw some of these flies. If you go to Alaska or a lot of the coastal rivers on the northwest, this type of egg-sucking fly is real popular. Kind of theory behind it is there's an egg there, and this little minnow or leech or sculpin's trying to eat the egg, and so the rainbows get aggressive and try to push them out of the way and get hooked on the fly. Then we got another color variation on a double bunny. This is the color that won the Jackson Hole 1 fly 3 years in a row. Olive back with a chinchilla belly, which may imitate a sculpin in coloration. There's a lot of different streamer patterns out there, but you want to just kind of look at a few of the basic things. The profile of the fly. We have big broad streamers to imitate big broad bait fish. We have narrow slender streamers to imitate narrow bait fish. You want to kind of match up to the bait fish in the area that you're fishing. One thing I like to use pretty frequently is a sinking type line. In this situation, I actually have a sinking shooting head attached to a monofilament running line that allows me to cover a lot of water very efficiently. Sink tip lines like the teeny mini tips, the 5-footers are great for fishing shallower water and they keep the fly in the zone a little bit deeper. Full sink lines can work in some situations, and then your traditional 10 to 13 foot sink tip in different densities. Another reason for fishing sinking lines, besides getting the fly down the depth, it's just easier to cast distances with them and to throw heavy flies. The lines are very narrow in diameter, and the fact that they're more dense makes them easier to cast. So you can plow them right into the wind, you can cover a lot of water, and in the streamer fishing, a lot of it's just covering water. Getting where the fish are, covering that area, moving to the next place and covering that area. So you can cover, by playing odds, you're going to pick up fish. We're going to show you some techniques of fishing these streamers in these conditions with a sinking line. What you want to remember is, if you can't make this fly sing and dance, you're not going to pick up fish. What we're doing in fishing the streamers cover a lot of water, as I've told you. We need to cover it very efficiently, and you don't want to leave any place vacant. We'll start here in a little bit closer, cast out, let the fly swing around, strip it in, and gradually work up to this log structure and to the bank structure. We want to start in close because we have depth here. Work the fly through the near structure. And with each cast, increase the distance. Casting it, working along, letting the sinking line carry it down. And you want to try different retrieves. Sometimes they want a fast retrieve. Will work when the fish are very aggressive. At other times, a slow, gentle retrieve may be the ticket. Especially when the water's cooler or the fish are less aggressive. The slow retrieve may actually imitate an injured bait fish just gently drifting down and moving occasionally. Where the fast retrieve will imitate a bait fish that's trying to escape. Kind of like running away from that dog where it may just come out after you even though it's not going to try to get you. We'll kind of work the structure, work the cover. Into the running line here, letting it swing along. A fairly good current here, it's going to move it fairly slow. That's another trick with retrieves. The faster the current, generally the slower the retrieve, because the current's moving your fly as well. What you want to do too, streamer fishing, is fish a fairly heavy leader. If fishing a big fly, you need the heavy leader to turn it over. But another reason is we're fishing around logs, or fish are going to take the fly pretty aggressively. You want to be able to hold the fish and actually sometimes pull your fly off a log. Oh, there was a strike. You'll sometimes miss fish streamer fish, and a lot of it's not your fault. Sometimes the fish are just swatting at a fly, trying to chase it out of their territory, or they're trying to stun a bait fish before they eat it. A lot of times the best way to set a strike is actually strip the line aggressively. You can also use your rod tip, but you want to make sure your rod tip's kind of pointed at the fish so that you can get the butt section of the rod to set the hook point rather than the tip, the flexible tip. Any type of drop where there's an ambush point, good structure to fish as they try to hang up a tree. Put the fly rod in there, let the current carry it down. And you're kind of learning how to skip cast. Another trick is kind of working seam lines. If I strip the fly straight across the seam line, it's not in the kill zone for very long. But if I kind of throw an upstream mend, I can work it up the seam line. If I cast downstream, make a curve cast, I can work it down along the seam line. Make a curve cast, just stop your rod tip hard. And the line will curve around. One thing you may want to look at too that's a good indicator there's a good drop off, or there's some structure. So right here we go from tan to green. Tan's a shallow riffle, green's a deep dark pool. We got some good soft water behind the tree. Place the fish can get refuge, rest, but also they can move real quickly into cover if necessary. Try to work it up close. And a lot of times a streamer moving downstream can be real effective. People think about streamers moving up and across or swinging down and across are the best way. Sometimes I like to pull them downstream, like a fish that's trying to escape. Let's get swung away by the current. Now work it right in the structure. If you use the warm water fish, bass fish, you'll really recognize this. And a lot of it's the same with brown trout. Another place we should try to work is a pool. Sometimes you'll find fish right and tight in cover, but also you'll find them out in these deeper pools and in tail outs, especially in the spring and fall. So we're just going to cover a bunch of water here. Try to cover it efficiently. It's almost like we're steelhead fishing. Shoot line on the back cast. Boom, right in there. Cast it out. Let it start swinging around. There he goes. Hit straight downstream. Got a good fish on. One thing with streamers that's nice, you got a fairly heavy tip, but you can actually put a lot of pressure on the fish. And when you want to put pressure on the fish, you want to use the butt end of the rod. You can angle it, pull them from different angles. Is a good way to work them. Keep your rod tip low. You have the orifice thing like that, you're going to have trouble landing a fish. When he wants to run, let him go, but don't let him control you. Palm the reel. Use the butt of the rod. That's the strong section of the rod. This OX tippet is probably about 15 pounds. But keep turning his head, work the fish. You're probably going to get him on the reel on a bigger fish like this, but work him. Don't let him get control over you. Don't let him get too far downstream. Once he's really far downstream, there he goes. It's going to be hard to change, move his head. But always keep changing angle, confusing the fish. A lot of how quickly you land a fish is really determined in the first few seconds you have him on. You let him know who's in control, it pretty much will follow you. Getting them in close. A lot of times we'll beach bigger fish like this, especially fishing streamers. You can work them up in shallow water. That way you can keep them in the water, usually not carrying a net around. It's just a little easier to deal with him getting shallow water. If they happen to break off or get off in the shallow water, no big deal, at least you caught him. Just kind of work him in. Yep. All right, there we go. Reviving the fish, got the hook out of him. There he goes. That's what streamer fishing's all about. Fold a nice fish on a bait fish pattern. You can also do this. I mean, regardless of the size of the fish, there's a lot of species you can catch on flies. People in trout country go out and catch trout. People in warm water country, you got white bass, you got smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, pike. All these bait fish eaters are all fun to catch, and we all catch them on streamers.